Yeah, good morning, and hey now, PASW staff, clients, and friends joining us. Welcome to Thursday's class. We're almost done with the week, and it's been a lot of fun. Yesterday, we looked at a little bit of my life in high school and the music I was starting to write. We'll continue that next week. And the day before, we looked at The Who's Tommy, which is very fun. And tomorrow, we'll have the film scoring results for the North by Northwest, the famous Hitchcock film. Very excited to share that with you. You guys did a great job. Today we're going to be doing a little LA tour and a lot of music actually. That's going to be exciting to talk about. Last week we did the Cinerama Dome, and remember, Cinerama Dome was built mostly because people were watching TV. All those great shows were coming on, and people weren't going out, so they needed to build a giant theater to get people out. So we talked about that. Let's go from the Cinerama Dome. Let's go to South LA and South Central, and we're going to talk about a very important thing that happened kind of from going back to the 1920s, and it's actually not far from our school either. Let's take a look at how close it is to our school. This is Central Avenue. We're going to be talking today about the famous Central Avenue where all these great jazz clubs were from the 20s and 50s. And it was the hub of West Coast jazz. We think of jazz really, in particular, 40s, 50s, bebop. That was all New York. That was 52nd Street. But actually, we had a lot going over on the West Coast. In fact, people called it Little Harlem because it had so many similarities with clubs and musicians coming through. And in particular, we'll use the Dunbar Hotel as kind of our reference because that was the main hub where people would stay. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the other jazz clubs. We're going to talk about the musicians. I'm so excited. We're going to have a good time. So let's talk about the Dunbar Hotel on Central Avenue. So the year's 1928. Okay, what's going on in 1928? This is when the hotel is built, and we'll talk about who built it and what in a second. But 1928. So this is after we talked about the Ambassador Hotel in the Coconut Grove. That was a few years earlier. So this is 28. So this is the time when penicillin's finally invented. Huge thing. We still use that for our medical needs. Also a time for women. Amelia Earhart is the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. And then Mickey Mouse. We get the Steamboat Willie, little mouse coming out. So Mickey Mouse is being developed. Medicine, huge develops in medicine and development in medicine. A huge thing for a female, flying Amelia Earhart's journey. That's huge. And culturally, we have the first thing by this guy named Walt Disney that's going to take over the world pretty soon. So that's what's going on. So in 1928, a very prominent black couple, they were Dr. John Somerville. He comes from Jamaica, moves to LA. First black guy to graduate from USC dental school. And his wife is also the first black woman to graduate from the dental school. So they're this power couple in the right before the 20s. They're rich, they're wealthy, they're politically involved with the city, and they both are also early proponents and a part of the NAACP. And what they discover, or John discovers, is that there's no hotel for black people that they can stay in that's luxurious. And the Ambassador Hotel was all lovely and great, but that's for white people. They couldn't. The black people would perform at the Coconut Grove, but they weren't allowed to stay there. They had to go to the Gaylord Hotel across the street, or they would come over here. And so his thing was that he wanted to create a luxurious hotel for black musicians traveling through, or for very successful black musicians that were from LA and that were playing there. So Hotel Somerville was, it would attract Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Lena Horne, Billie Holiday, Langston Hughes and Thurgood Marshall. So, and intellectuals, they would come and hang out in the lobby. And it was a very beautiful hotel. I mean, it was Art Deco lobby with a beautiful chandelier, Spanish tile windows. And when the Depression hit in the 30s, the Somerville, they kind of lost some of the power in it. So that's when it became the Dunbar Hotel, and the Dunbar, and then people would, black musicians. This was kind of in the 30s. So by the 40s, 50s, Central Avenue was just cooking with jazz musicians. Dexter Gordon, Eric Dolphy, and Charles Mingus, who we talked about. They were playing at all these jazz clubs. I mean, we think of 52nd Street in New York, as the really just the center for bebop and jazz, and it was. But we also had our little Harlem over here going on. Ray Charles and Count Basie would play at these little clubs, and they were packed. And so the Dunbar was kind of where they would stay a lot of times, and that was kind of this luxurious place. But these little clubs, Club Alabama, the Downbeat, Elks Hall. Downbeat was where Mickey Cohen would always hang out at. It's also where Charlie Parker played, and we did talk about Charlie Parker playing in Inglewood, a few miles away. So, we think of Charlie Parker as just a New York-based player, but people came out to L.A. People from New Orleans moved out to L.A. And not only transplants, but people that were born and raised here, because very close to here you had the great Jefferson High School. Jefferson High was, had an amazing music jazz program for high schoolers. I mean, it taught composition, theory, music appreciation, orchestra, band. This was in the 40s. They had great teachers that were teaching music. And people that graduated from there, from Jefferson High: Dexter Gordon, Art Farmer, Donald Cherry, people from the Platters, Etta James. A lot of great musicians just came out of Jefferson High. We had the Lincoln Theater, which a lot of people thought that it was the equivalent of the Apollo, the West Coast Apollo, that held over 2,000 seats. So you'd have Nat King Cole and Lionel Hampton, Sammy Davis Jr. performing there. And these were places and theaters that were all run by black people. And, in turn, white Hollywood celebrities, they'd come because they loved the music there. They would have, Humphrey Bogart, Marilyn Monroe, W.C. Fields, Bing Crosby. They loved coming, Howard Hughes. They loved coming out here to hear this great, wonderful music that was going on. So 40s, 50s, and early 60s, just the music was amazing. But, people coming through and just playing. And the Dunbar was this just great place to hang out, to watch music. So Central Avenue had all these great little clubs that were just wonderful. It kind of went away in the 60s. And this is for better or worse. This is a tough one, because with the abolishment of these segregation laws that were going on in the country and in Los Angeles, it allowed blacks to move into other parts of the city, which was great. But because of that, Central Avenue kind of became a little bit obsolete and a little bit run down, because there wasn't really people there enough to give it the care and love or support, which is, so they were kind of run down. So it was great that blacks were allowed to live in other places in the city, obviously, no doubt. But because of that, it was kind of neglected. But now it's a monument, and it's known as Dunbar Village over there. So it's lovely over there. They've fixed it up. It's a low-income apartment building for elderly tenants, but the city's worked hard to restore it, and they give it like $14 million renovation. So the jazz clubs aren't there anymore, obviously, and the hotel isn't functioning, but there's still some piece of history that's still there for us to see. And it's so cool that all this great music, this jazz music, was part of this Central Avenue, part of our history that, frankly, I didn't know about. I really didn't know anything about this, and it was so fun researching and looking it up. Thanks for watching. This is a good little LA tour trip of something that's not there, but I think there's memories that are still there of it, and obviously memories of the beautiful music that came out of there that we still listen to today. So, okay, great. Tomorrow is film scoring results for North by Northwest. Love you, miss you. Have a great rest of the day, and see you tomorrow.